Gen Z is making memes about all this stuff and everyone is extra fucked up because of it. Like, no, we've been doing this for years before there was even internet. Well, hello, friends.
Hello.
I almost said we're Christina.
We are Christina.
Because I forgot to say my name the last time I introduced us.
Oh, well, that's Christina who's talking.
And that's Lauren who just talked.
Not now. Yeah. We do so well at this.
Okay, so I'm Christina, you're Lauren. This is Pickles and Vodka, the mental health podcast where imperfect people have imperfect conversations.
That it is.
And it is Saturday, November 26th that we're recording. Thanksgiving in the U.S. was 2 days ago. And I'm still kind of reeling. I don't know about you. Not reeling is the wrong word. Like recovering, I guess.
So I didn't really do much for Thanksgiving because I don't drive the 12 and a half hour or 13. I keep making it longer. 11 and a half hours.
I hear that happens with age. You just keep exaggerating the unpleasant things in your life. Kind of like romanticizing mental illness.
Oh, yeah, I walk to school in the snow uphill both ways, even in July.
I would expect nothing less.
Right. But anyway, yeah, so I didn't really do much for Thanksgiving. I've already seen family this year and made that drive to Michigan. I don't go back or anything. So I feel like I did okay because I was just done recovering from the mom visit.
Yeah, so your mom visited last week. In fact, I think it was like the day that we recorded our last episode. What, didn't she arrive later?
The day after.
The day after. So how the fuck did that go? How are you feeling right now in the moment, first of all? How are you at? Where are you at? God damn it.
It went better than I expected, but that doesn't mean that it was perfect.
Well, yeah.
I did have a friend get together yesterday for people that didn't do anything on Thanksgiving, and my dad and I had been kind of playing phone tag back and forth on Thanksgiving Day, so I said I'll call you on the drive home. So I immediately have already gotten guilt tripped for the fact that I'm not coming back for Christmas this year. So that was fun.
Yeah, it's like if you're there, then it's chaotic, and if you're not there, it's also...
Then, yes, they make it chaotic.
Yeah, there's just no way to win.
I told them, like I said, I only do that drive once a year, and for people that have not experienced it, Michigan's generally not that fun to drive in December.
No, if it's anything like Illinois.
It's like Illinois with more snow, usually.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
So I went back this year in July, August, so that I could actually enjoy my time there. And I told them then, I said, this is my one time. This means I'm not coming home for Christmas this year. So it's not like it's a surprise, but suddenly they're like, are you really not coming back for Christmas? No.
Yeah, when I was living on the other side of the country from my family, that was the one, quote unquote, positive, was that I only had to go back one time a year, and no one expected me to be there more than once a year. But then, of course, the downside was that I was far away from my family.
Yeah.
Are you feeling just emotionally exhausted, having dealt with your mom and then that drive?
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of on the upswing now because it's been a few days. So yeah, I'm starting to get back to normal.
I've just been dying to hear how the visit with your mom went, because I know that she helped you decorate your place. Which the pictures I've seen look amazing. I can't wait to see it in person.
Yeah, I mean, since I'm not going back for Christmas, I think we both agreed that I kind of got Christmas this time because I know part of it's because she was excited. She wanted to buy me a lot of shit.
What are parents for?
Exactly. I feel like we had enough to do that up until the last day, and then, I was going to bed and I was like, yeah, you can go home now.
Bye.
But, we kept busy. I mean, I will give you a picture to post somewhere. We put together this huge desk in one night.
Oh, hell yeah.
Very impressed with. I have tons of room right now to set up my microphone and my laptop. And yeah, I'm enjoying this for the first time.
Oh, well, it's the first time.
I'm enjoying the desk for the first time, not I'm enjoying podcasting for the first time.
How many episodes have you been co-hosting now? 16?
I've hated the first 12, but now I'm enjoying it.
We've reached our peak now.
Yes.
Welcome.
Yeah. So where are you at since you've just dealt with everything?
I mean, this is my second Thanksgiving in recovery. So second Thanksgiving since probably 2017, not binging and purging and all that stuff.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It went pretty well. I had 2 Thanksgiving dinners to go to. I had Brett's family, and then I had my family.
Yeah.
So I kind of have emotional whiplash from it, because when I was with Brett's family, they're so different from my family. They're kind of quieter, and they're definitely smaller than my family, in terms of the amount of people. And so I felt kind of like a normie when I was there. I was just like, hanging back with the adults and having small talk and, not having any weird food issues. And I was just like, this feels really weird.
Well, that's something I was wondering in particular, because I know you are pretty open, about everything with your family. So I was just wondering, like, did you get the feeling when you are going through it in recovery, like, is everybody watching to be like, she's okay, right? Yeah.
It's funny because, like, back when I used to binge and purge in secret at family gatherings, I was really good at it. I was really good at sneaking away and doing it without anyone noticing. But now I feel like, now that I have a grip on that, I'll go to the bathroom and I'll like cough a lot or something in there, and then I'll be like, oh shit, it sounds like I'm binging and purging, but I promise I'm not. Like, I feel like I'm more, it looks like I am more often now that I'm not.
Like, now that I'm just acting normally instead of sneaking around, it seems like I might be.
And that'll take time to reestablish that trust. It's hard for me to trust myself sometimes, so I can't even imagine my family. But anyway, so that was Brett's Thanksgiving dinner. My family's was interesting. It was like the opposite experience, because I went and everything was chaotic and loud, and I always feel like I kind of revert back into that old way of thinking sometimes. Yeah. When I'm at my parents, through no fault of their own. I feel that a lot. We've talked about this before. It's natural. When you're in that kind of environment with all those memories attached, sometimes you revert. Yeah. And while, I didn't engage in any behaviors this year, I definitely triggered myself a lot over the course of, like, I think I was over there for 12 hours yesterday.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I mean, it's just kind of, I don't know. I'm kind of having a tiff with my mom right now about something. And I don't know if I want to talk about it on the podcast yet. But
well, she does listen.
She does. Well, she might not anymore.
Oh no.
Yeah. I can just get into it. She got a little offended over some of the stuff I talked about on the trauma episode with my past.
Okay.
And this has happened before. I will say something that happened to me in relation to my family or my religious upbringing, and she gets offended because she takes it so personally. Oh. She thinks like I'm attacking her. Where that's not my intention at all.
Like, I can tell you're not when you're talking about it, but someone closer to it, I can understand.
Yeah, and so we had this whole talk, like, I don't want to censor myself, and then she's like, well, maybe I'll stop listening, and I was like, okay, you don't have to listen, like, and then, yesterday, there were a lot of religious comments and and I was thinking, like, you don't have to listen to my podcast, but I'm not over here bringing all of my lifestyle choices to your family dinner, like, I'm not pushing my stuff in your face, I'm not talking about my political views, I barely talk about my political views on this podcast, because I'm so worried about offending my family.
Yeah, that was something you just reminded me. That was probably actually the toughest part about my mom's visit is, yes, my family has always been religious. I got sent to Catholic school till I was in 5th grade. I got in trouble if I stayed overnight at a friend. I usually couldn't stay overnight at a friend's house on a Saturday because my mom didn't believe that I'd get to church.
Oh, yeah. That was a big thing. You had to be out in time for church.
And yes, and if I said that if it was like a family that like was in our church and I said I was going to, but they weren't as strict about it and my mom found out I didn't go, then I would really be in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
But still, she didn't stuff it in my face so much, and I don't know if it's because we've had conversations where I've said, I would never consider myself Catholic. I, have kind of I don't not believe in God, but I thought that'd make her feel better. But I was I do have kind of a more loose interpretation and things like that. So I don't know if it's her response to that, but I just feel, I felt like every single thing, like if something went right, she had to be like, that's God looking out for us.
Oh my God.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
On Thanksgiving Day, my family sent out a group text. My sister lost her keys and my parents like walked around looking for it, and then they found it and they sent a text like, glory be to God, we found it.
Yeah.
And I was with Brett's family at the time when I got that, and I was just not feeling it. And I just responded like, Sky Daddy for the win. And my mom liked it. In short, nothing really traumatic or terrible happened, and I'm grateful for that. But also, I'm just really exhausted emotionally, and I'm tired of going over there and just getting all this stuff pushed in my face.
Yeah, it was nice that when my mom left, apparently Jesus left too, because I think they were both visiting me.
Oh my God, we call my apartment Christina's House of Sin. It's like an inside joke from years ago when my parents were staying at my old place that I shared with a boyfriend at the time. I was like, well, you might not approve of it, but you're willing to visit Christina's House of Sin.
Yes.
But we are off on a wild tangent.
Oh, but I do have a quick story that's so good that you reminded me of. Because the boyfriend that I lived with for several years, his parents were possibly more religious than mine. They were, I don't know, some like sect of Baptist. And
Ooh, Baptist.
Yes, and like they went to church, like multiple times a week and everything. So when we moved in, we always had a 2-bedroom place. We were in a very cheap city, so we could actually afford that.
Nice.
And it was very helpful to have my own space. Like I usually had my desk and my computer in what was considered my room. And I had, like a twin bed that I moved with me because, we put it in my room at first and, just thinking like a guest can sleep there. We've got an extra bed. But so our third place that we moved into actually had a basement as well. And it was, semi-finished. So since the second room was pretty small, we were just like, well, it makes more sense to put the bed in the basement. And his parents were helping us move in. I don't remember exactly what the circumstance was, but, like something like the bed was in the basement. And
I think I know where this is going.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Something got moved up. I just remember them making the comment like, oh, well, you're going to have to move the bed upstairs anyways. I'm like, clearly they think that we have separate rooms because we're still sleeping in separate beds in separate rooms. And I was just like, we've been living together for 3 years. Even my parents aren't that clueless.
I think some of it is just wishful thinking.
Yeah, I think they just wanted to put their blinders on. Yep.
What do you think that... Anyway,
Yeah, okay. Done with that tangent. I just thought that was hilarious.
I think it's hilarious. Lauren, why don't you intro the pickle poll today, because you're the one that came up with it, and I think it's one of my favorites yet.
Yes, so it is, do you feel like you have romanticized certain types of mental illness? How does this relate or contrast mental issues that you've dealt with?
It's a good one. I have a lot of experience with it, obviously, but I wanted to hear like what made you choose that question and what your own answer to it is.
Yeah, so I was actually just like jotting down some notes like 20 minutes before this.
Me too!
Yeah, because I hadn't really thought about it. I felt like I can just come in and talk about this easily. I mean, I do have a lot to say, but oh my God, I was writing this, like, oof, this is difficult stuff. So yeah, this is going to be a tough one. Yeah, my main reason is because I have always felt kind of guilty as an adult as I did deal with different mental illnesses, because I always felt like I kind of wanted them.
Yeah.
And it feels so terrible to think like I wanted to be sick, or like knowing people that do not want this so much in their life and are trying so hard, to get past it. And I'm thinking like, wow, stupid, like 10 or 13-year-old me is just flaunting that in your face saying, well, I want this. I think it sounds fun.
Yeah.
People are going through hell.
I think before we do this topic, we have to have a disclaimer that like we are going to be talking a lot about choosing our mental illnesses and all that stuff. We're going to be using the word choose a lot because I feel like the same way that you just described. I feel like so many people are stuck in this life and they don't want to be here, and I'm choosing it, quote unquote. Yeah. I just want to do the disclaimer because I feel like this relates to imposter syndrome that we talked about last week. Like, maybe we wandered into our mental illnesses through our own actions or maybe at one point we did want it, but that doesn't discredit the fact that it is an illness.
I mean, I hope we'll talk about this, because there are definitely things that kind of, like, have opened my eyes much later in life to realize, like, oh, I did not choose it. I mean, like, starting at junior high age, I felt like, wow, you know, like, I really want this. I think this would be great. But, you know, when I go back, then I realize, like, oh, you know what? The seeds were planted when I was, like, 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And I had no clue. So clearly this was going to happen whether I decided 5 years later that I wanted it or not. It was already on its way.
Yeah, and if not an eating disorder, who knows what else it might have been. Like, how else it might have manifested itself.
Yeah.
You know? Oh, man, I have so much to say about this. We could just start reading the comments. Okay, so we got 2 comments on Facebook responding to this question. Do you want to read the first one?
Sure, because I see how it starts out and I love it.
Yeah.
This is from Olivia, and she says, abso-freaking-lutely. But I think that was a big sign of my own immaturity, or maybe naïveté is a better word. It was easy to feel as though the chaos of certain disorders or mental illnesses set me apart, when in reality, the boring life of healthy recovery is actually much more unique these days. And our insanely unhealthy tabloids and magazines from like 2004, oh my gosh, you nailed that on the head, to 2014 were just full of romanticizing mental illness, self-injury, eating disorders, and addictions. Looking back on some of those articles is just, and then there's 3 emojis of like, oh, fuck, what the shit.
It's the mind blown emojis.
Yes.
Oh my god. Yeah, the 2004 through 2014 was such a toxic era.
In particular, maybe like 2004 through 2008, then I was buying some of those magazines. Like, I'm not a tabloid type person, but yeah, just to get the cover story and to, just salivate over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More on that in a second, but I first want to talk about the part where she talks about the romanticization of her mental illness was a sign of her own immaturity or naivete. What do you think about that? Do you think it is a sign of immaturity, like just being young and impressionable?
I agreed with the naivete part, but not immaturity.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I feel like it could be not realizing the full scope. That's what I think of as naive, but I don't think that, immaturity I think of as being like childish, and I don't think it's childish.
Yeah, children don't see a picture of like a starving person and they're like, I want that. Or maybe, I don't know what kids are doing these days. But I mean, that's something to talk about, is just the age at which people start doing this, like romanticizing their mental illness. And
yes.
Sometimes mental illnesses aren't even diagnosed until years after you start romanticizing this stuff.
Right.
And I was thinking, like, which came first, That kind of adds to the imposter syndrome. Like, am I really mentally ill, or am I just, like, romanticizing this stuff so much and manifesting it into my life so much that, like, I'm just copying what I see online?
Mm-hmm. And for me, I mean, a lot of the early stuff, there was no online when I was starting, when I was like 10 or 12.
Yeah, I say online, I mean like, the tabloids, the magazines, the books, whatever media you consumed.
That's what I was going to say is, I was finding everything I could in the library, and I was already worried, I was like, is the librarian going to think I'm weird for checking out these?
That's the thing. When I was researching this episode, I found a lot of articles talking about, like, how this generation is romanticizing mental illness. Like, Gen Z is making memes about all this stuff, and everyone is extra fucked up because of it. Like, no, we've been doing this for years, before there was even internet. Like,
right.
I mean, look at some of the classic literature that has been written. Like, hundreds of year old literature. People are doing the same exact thing.
Yeah, I remember that movie that Tracy Gold starred in, like, when she was still in her illness, basically.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, she wasn't Family Ties. She was one of those sitcoms.
I probably haven't seen it.
I don't know why they're all coming up.
but she was an actress.
Yeah, and she was one of the first people first became aware when, like Karen Carpenter died. And she was kind of that same thing, like she was in a time where people weren't really talking about this, but she like got super sick and everyone noticed like, oh my gosh, you know, like stars, they're just like the rest of us.
But also we want to be fucked up in the way that the star is fucked up.
You know, yeah, then it was a story kind of like those tabloids, but it was because, you know, like we have never heard of this thing. And
I can't even imagine. Like being 10 years older, I'm just like, I can't imagine that.
Apparently,
I mean, 10 years younger.
Yeah, but there was whatever.
Whatever.
There was a movie that she starred in. Might have been based on a true story because it was a story of like the girl that developed anorexia, and like the main part of it was, I think, that her parents took her to court basically to
get her
like,
treatment,
force her. Yeah, you know, like because she was refusing, and they had to get like a court order, and that was kind of like a big deal. But I heard that they filmed it in reverse because she was kind of like newly in recovery. And so like the end scenes where they wanted her to, look like at her worst, that's what they filmed first because she was still pretty,
Oh, I don't know how I feel about that.
Oh, yeah. It's very controversial and questionable. But I remember, what I was going to say is I remember my parents had a tiny black and white TV in their bedroom, and we only got cable in the main TV downstairs, but you could kind of get like fuzzy channels sometimes. And, you know, like my parents are obviously going to be in control of the TV, and I also didn't want them to know I was watching this.
Right.
So I remember them all, you know, like sitting downstairs, you know, watching whatever, you know, like sitcoms and dramas they watch after dinner and everything. And I was hiding out upstairs watching a fuzzy, like, staticky version of this movie on their little black and white TV.
But, you know, you chose your eating disorder. That had nothing to do with it.
Right.
Next comment? Unless you have anything else to say about Olivia's comment?
Go ahead.
Oh, wait, no, I remembered something. I really like how she mentioned previously feeling like her mental illness set her apart, when in reality, like, the quote-unquote boring life of healthy recovery is actually much more unique these days.
Yes, I love
just wanted to, you know, point that out because it's honestly true. My life is so boring these days, but I've never been happier, ?
Yeah.
I still feel like I can't say that because something bad will happen if I do.
Oh.
But it's so true. Like, I always thought that I was unique because of my mental illness and that it was my identity. And in some ways, like, yes, that is a huge part of my identity, and it's not going to stop being part of my identity. But I'm also realizing these days that life outside of that also has just as much potential to be glamorous and fun and interesting as life did when I was sick. And that was like one of my big fears, is that life is just going to be boring. I mean, when I stopped drinking, I remember thinking my social life was over.
Yeah, you've talked about feeling like you weren't as interesting.
Yeah, and now that I'm 3 years sober, I'm like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I still feel like if let's say I do recover even more, am I just not gonna, like, talk about this stuff anymore? Like, will I even have the authority to be able to talk about it if I'm not actively struggling? And, like, what does that mean for the podcast? And will I be able to relate to Lauren as much? And, like, these are the things that go through my head. And it's so silly because, like, the more I focus on recovery, the more mentally able I am to do the podcast and to do all this stuff.
And I will say, for one thing, I've only had conversations with you when you are sober from alcohol, and I definitely don't think that you are uninteresting or anything. Like, I would not be talking to you. I was just, if I'd started talking to you and was like, well, she's kind of a wet blanket and dull.
Well, that's my point. Like, I am interesting without it, and I am interesting without, like, apart from my mental illness. But it's just hard to remind myself that sometimes. So I appreciated Olivia saying that in the comment.
Not to, like, tell this whole story again, because we already did, and we don't need the excuse to give the whole trigger warning before it. But the story that I told about thinking that I was the only person, you know, doing a certain sort of self-injury.
Oh,
and once I realized I wasn't, then I was like, I'm not special.
I think that was on the harm reduction episode, maybe?
Probably,
Or coping method.
Oh, coping, I think you're right.
Yes. The coping episode.
Yes.
We're familiar with our backlog. All right, so the next comment is from Christine with a K.
Yep.
So she says she experienced romanticizing mental illness possibly in middle school / high school. I may have romanticized eating disorders. Oh, how I wish I could have been thin and purged.
Oh.
I am incapable of force vomiting to this day. I made the mistake of using ipecac syrup to attempt to alleviate a binge, and all I did was blow up with gas, and it was so fucking painful. Been there. Now I wish nothing more than to be free of all my mental health issues. I have a gambit of labels and try to help others through my own life lessons.
Wow.
Oh, we can both relate to that a lot.
Yes.
Well, first of all, I have to say that when I met Christine, it was in 2010 in high school. We went to the same, like, small Christian school together. And I didn't really know her that well. I know she's listening, so whatever. I didn't really know you that well, Christine, when I met you. But I did get the sense that you were struggling. I think I even wrote about it in a journal at one point. I was just like, there's a new girl, and I think she struggles with food issues, and I want to, like, talk to her, but I'm afraid, blah, 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 all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I got the sense, even back then, not knowing her, that she struggled with some of this stuff. And so it's just crazy to see this comment now. And that's why I love this podcast, is it's brought a lot of people back into my life that I, like, just didn't know or have gone years without talking to. And, like, just... I love that people are telling us their experiences and we can all relate. It's just beautiful.
Yes.
Tangent, though. I feel like this is such a thing in eating disorders where you see a behavior someone else does and you wish you could do it and you feel like you are not as sick. Or like if you get that sick, then somehow you'll be deserving of help. We've talked about this before, but like, what are your thoughts?
Wow. She actually, her comment like just transported me to a scene in my life.
Ooh, do tell.
I would classify myself as, however you pronounce it, emetophobic, whatever. I am freaked out at the thought of puking, seeing anybody else do it, anything like that. So not quite the same, but for me, I also felt around that time in middle school, high school, when I was engaging in behaviors, that I wasn't good enough at starving, basically.
Oh, yeah. I feel like we've all felt like that. Anyone who struggled with eating disorders, it's like even if you skip eating for 2 days, it's still not enough.
Yeah, you're still like, I could be better. But yeah, because I didn't feel like I was very good at that, then even though I knew, that I was terrified of it, I just really wished that I could force myself to throw up because then I could do something about it because I wasn't doing well enough at starving. So so the picture she painted just reminded me, and I mean, I'm sorry, this is another church story, but it's only because I was playing piano for a church. It really has nothing to do with church itself.
I don't apologize to me. Apologize to Ginger Lou.
It just happened to be a job. But yes, I was playing piano for a church, and they were very nice because they knew I didn't have like a piano in my apartment to play on, and I had keys to the building, and they had a baby grand, and they're like, if you ever want to play, you're welcome to on the off days. I was like, oh, that's so sweet. And
I would go to church for that.
Yeah. And so I came in, just like a weekday once and brought some music and was playing and everything. But I didn't drive myself. My boyfriend, the toxic one that I lived with, that comes into so many stories.
You should give him a fake name or something because you refer to him so much.
I know. Steve.
All right, Steve.
Yes. So, we were both out. So the idea was he was going to drop me off, do what he had to do, and pick me up in a couple hours. And I don't know why that is important, other than just maybe just because he was involved, and that makes me feel more like self-conscious and everything. So afterwards, I'm just in this empty church alone, and I go to the bathroom, and that's where I just remember feeling like so struck by it, and just really, really wishing, because I was just super screwed up and vulnerable place to begin with. And I remember like kneeling in front of the toilet and like knowing that I was kind of doing the motions to try, but also knowing that I was afraid to try enough that I might actually do it. And eventually just sitting there in the stall, kneeling in front of the toilet, crying because I couldn't make myself throw up.
Oh man, I remember feeling like that, and then I eventually learned how, and that was just the end of everything.
Yeah.
So you just felt like that was a response to what, your Steve picking you up, or just feeling, the body stuff you were dealing with at the time?
Yeah, like I think all of that was especially at that point coming from my life with him, because I've mentioned like he was pretty emotionally abusive. So when someone's telling you that you're not good enough all the time, then you believe it and you're trying to do something about it. And at that point, being good enough, I felt that, I was losing weight.
What about using your mental illnesses as like, when you romanticize your mental illnesses so much that you feel like it'll solve a problem in your life, or like your life is so dissatisfactory in other areas that you romanticize your mental illness just to focus on anything else?
Yeah.
I felt like that a lot. Like, I will be in that relationship that's not perfect or whatever, and I'll just think like, this sucks, but I can't really get out of it tomorrow. I might as well lose weight. Because then maybe I'll be more attractive or more interesting, or at least I'll have something to focus on that's not how miserable I am. Because this, eating disorders are so much interesting and glamorous.
Exactly. I'll be so special then.
Yeah.
It's interesting for me because I hear that a lot from people, that they say, like in the beginning, I really thought it was going to get me all these things. And now now I know that it won't, but
it gets you a lot of things.
Yes.
Not exactly good things.
Yeah, and I feel like in the beginning, yes, I felt like it would get me quote unquote things, but mine were not things, like I didn't think that it would make me popular. I didn't think it would make people like me. It was, maybe in the very, very early days, but for the most part, I remember a big time of thinking like, that'll show them.
Yeah.
Sort of. I felt like people are going to see me just like deteriorating, and they will realize what they've done.
Oh my god. Okay, we need to play the next voicemail now because this ties in perfectly. Okay, so we got 2 voicemails for this question. One of them is from Orion, who has sent us voicemails before. The other one is from Heather, who has commented before. She's your friend.
No, she did have a voicemail.
Heather sent a voicemail.
Yes.
Yeah, she sent another voicemail. But unfortunately, the quality was so bad, I couldn't play it. It was like really feedbacky and had a ton of like, it was weirdly sped up. So Heather, I don't know what you did. I don't know if it's your phone.
I don't know what you did.
Heather, what did you do? So basically, this week, I'm going to try to make a video showing people how to submit voicemails on Instagram.
I don't actually know. You just tell them, and I assume you know how to tell them.
Yeah, because when people have tried submitting voicemails on Anchor in the past, it's been messed up. So I'm just going to say it now.
Okay.
Like, don't submit voicemails on Anchor. Send them on Instagram. If you don't know how, I'm going to make a video soon.
Cool.
But yeah, so her voicemail we won't be playing, but I did transcribe it, and we'll be going over her thoughts. Okay, so first we're going to play Orion's voicemail.
Okay, I'm ready.
So I think my thoughts on this pickle poll kind of got away from me. When I reread the question, it's talking about certain specific types of mental illnesses that are romanticized, and I think I went a little broader in my thinking on it, so here's just my general thoughts, what came to mind for me. Something that comes up for me often is this quote by Maria Hornbacher that I'll read. When you believe that you are not worthwhile in and of yourself, in the back of your mind you also believe that life is not worthwhile in and of itself. It is only worthwhile insofar as it relates to your crusade. It is a kamikaze mission. And mental illnesses are internal, and the pain is real, but it's invisible. And we don't often know how to heal that pain, so we embrace it by giving it a greater purpose, by romanticizing it, if you will. And I think that this sort of romanticization of our pain is a necessary part of being ill. It's comforting, like sucking on a cough drop. So it's soothing, but no matter how many cough drops you suck down, you're still going to be sick. It's not gonna fix you. And if you have constant pain inside your mind, you have to do something to live through it every day. You have to make that pain make sense. You have to make it worth living through. So however your mental illness manifests, it sort of becomes a mission in itself, or like a story or a romantic journey of isolation or mania or risk-taking and drugs and starvation and spending and binging and self-deprivation and indulgence. We act out our dreams of what we think we want to be and what our purpose is. So we're acting out this story that we think will give us most value to other people. And we might romanticize the parts of us that most need real healing, where we find the most dissatisfaction, where we feel the most helplessness. And so, but the purpose of surviving illness itself isn't a sustainable goal for its own sake. It's always going to be a self-repeating struggle. Like life moves on. Life is the victories we experience. It's new lessons, new tragedies, and realizing that your life is worth something, even through all this meaningless pain, because the pain is not the meaning. The meaning is having human experiences and deepening our understanding and establishing ourselves in the world. Like, that is, like, truly romantic and fulfilling. I love the book Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which he wrote reflecting on how he and his fellow prisoners in the Nazi concentration camps made sense of their suffering. And his philosophy was that man's deepest desire is to find meaning in his life. And if he can find that meaning, he can survive anything. And he gave meaning to the suffering as an act of transformation. So, like, mental illness might be part of our lives, but not our life's meaning. Our meaning is, it's the potential to accept the challenge, to not be like an eternal tragedy crying for help. It's our ability to grow from that suffering and to survive for my own sake. And I know that suffering is something I would love to deeply avoid, but it is inevitable in every circumstance except after death. We can't suffer after death, but we must suffer through life. And so we have a choice to learn to work with and overcome our suffering in whatever way we can, or we can embrace suffering and make that the purpose of our life, make that our whole, make that what gives us worth. And I'm very tired of doing that. I'm very tired of thinking my life is only worth something if I am suffering and if I am sad, because if this is going to be my fate anyway, I might as well embrace it. You know, I might as well romanticize those parts of me that are causing me the most pain. But you know what I never end up romanticizing are the victories, when I choose not to engage in self-destructive behaviors, when I choose to go face what is giving me the most fear and what makes me feel like I'm going to die. Those are the things that really are what feels like my real life, my real will. And those are the things that bring me closer to other people and to the world. Yeah, I wish I had more maybe specifics to talk about. I mean, there's a lot to talk about on this subject, but those are just my thoughts on sort of the existential purpose of romanticizing mental illness. So, I don't know, maybe you can make sense of some of this nonsense I've got. All right, love you, bye.
Love you, Orion.
Yes.
Oh, I was literally taking a note in the middle of it on top of all the notes I took when I was editing it.
Yes, as usual, I was taking notes on that too.
Well, the thing that jumps out at me right away is, like, why don't we romanticize the good things that happen, like the victories in our life?
Yeah.
That jumped out at me. I was like, whenever I write and journal and make art, it's always when I'm feeling sad or angry or whatever. It's never when I'm feeling happy and when I have something to celebrate.
I mean, I feel like that's really common. I remember, like, hearing a interview with Fiona Apple, because she's gone, like, several years in between releasing albums, and, you know, some people are like, we want more music from you. Why don't you, why didn't you write something? And she said, it's because everything was going good in my life. I had no pain to write about.
Yeah.
She was just like, that's what inspires my music. So,
I mean, there is meaning in suffering. He kept using the word meaning, and I really latched onto that because for so much of my life, my meaning has come from my suffering. But like he said, that's exhausting.
One of the notes that I took that I really liked was where he said, like, what you go through in your mental illness and things like that are part of your life, but they're not part of your life's meaning.
Yeah. And that's a hard pill to swallow, especially when you have a mental health podcast.
Yes.
But it's so true. It's like we put our worth in our suffering. And I really love the Maria Hornbacher quote, too. First of all, Maria Hornbacher is a queen. Talk about romanticizing mental illness. Like, she wrote the romantic eating disorder memoir. Like,
kind
one of the first ones, not the first one.
But how I feel about that is she did not feel like she was romantic. She felt like she was putting the hard truths out there. Everybody else romanticized it.
Exactly. Like, it's a really honest book, and it shows a lot of the ugly sides of eating disorders, but also it uses, like, graphic language. It doesn't hold anything back.
Yeah.
And a lot of people latch on to that side, like the romantic side of that, and they completely ignore the absolutely nightmarish parts.
Yeah, I've always thought, like, how frustrating must it be to have written this to be like, look at this, fucking hell. No one wants to live this. And people are like, I'm going to try and use this as a blueprint and be like her.
Yeah. I go back and forth between wanting to share everything and then wanting to, protect people.
Yeah.
But we digress again.
I did want to say one more thing, because this is something that was not said in the voicemail, but it immediately, something made me think of it. The most convincing argument against feeling like you are romanticizing, I feel like, is symptom switching.
What's that?
That's when you put yourself in a place, like you go to treatment and you have to give up the eating disorder. So you start doing something else destructive.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I've totally done that.
That's where I feel, like you can't say then, like, I just really wanted, to have this diagnosis and I wanted to, be this person, where if you take it away, you immediately go to something else.
Well, Orion talks about, romanticizing this stuff and then reaching a point where he's just realized, I'm tired. Mm-hmm. And this isn't going away. Like, you can find meaning maybe temporarily and it can help you, but then it's going to repeat itself. Like, nothing's going to change. And so I think romanticizing this stuff can be a short-term coping mechanism. And I actually made a list of, like, when it can be beneficial to romanticize your mental illness. Mm-hmm. Like artists, for instance. Talking about that pain and, like, quote-unquote romanticizing it can be healing and can help a lot of people. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, if you're someone who is, like, really impressionable, or maybe you're, like, someone who's violent, or, like, has violent tendencies with no outlet, like, you hear a lot in the news about these, like, mentally ill lone wolf types who go off on a rampage. Like, we just had a shooting last week, the Virginia shooting at the Walmart. That was in my parents' neighborhood. Like, we go there all the time. And there's already, like, there's discourses in the media every time something like this happens of, like, is this romanticizing the mental illness, and all that stuff. I think definitely it can be harmful for people like that. Yeah. I don't even know where I was going with this.
Tangent?
Question mark.
I know I have a few more things jotted down that I want to get to, but are we able to get to Heather's voicemail transcribed?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that first.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for keeping me on track.
That's all right.
All right, so Heather sent in a voicemail. I wasn't able to make it listenable, unfortunately. But basically, she says, hi, I listen to the podcast every week.
Yay!
So she says she's definitely romanticized mental health issues, and the way that it relates to her own mental health is like a downward spiral / circle. When I was full-fledged in my eating disorder, I felt like it was some sort of magical place, but it was not. And then she talks about romanticizing her past, whether it was the depths of her ED or the relapses. She talks about, like, the outcomes from romanticizing journal entries, which I thought we could both relate to. And again, Heather, I'm sorry if I'm, like, completely messing this up. I just took, like, what bits I could hear. But I got the sense that with these journal entries, she wanted to get back to that whimsical, magical place that's not magical at all. And going back to that place, or, like, wanting to go back to that place, is triggering and detrimental to her mental health currently. She mentioned, like, magical thinking. How, she knows it's not going to work, but it always seems like it's going to work. And every time just getting sucked into that magical thinking of, like, maybe this time it'll be different.
Yes.
And I can definitely relate to that.
Yes.
So I was looking up a journal entry I could possibly share, and I couldn't find any, but I know that in the past I've definitely written about wanting to be sicker, but I've also written about wanting to be better. And, like, in both situations, I'm completely miserable. And it's like, this never works out. Why can't you see that? Like, it's never going to turn out the way you think it's going to be. It's never going to be magical or whimsical. You're not going to necessarily get the kind of attention you want. It's just, gonna keep you stuck in your illness. Like, what do you think about that?
So that leads, well, I told you I had like a couple things, and I really want to end on the thought that leads into, so I'll do it later.
Okay.
But I also knew that she was going to have things about romanticizing for sure, because like I said, I met her in some, like internet board where, especially in the early days, we were all romanticizing it. So that's what I was just like, we were just a group of people romanticizing. Of course,
I mean,
she
that's
did.
How,
we all did.
How we met, you know, on an eating disorder group.
Yes. At that point, I was more just like looking for my next group of people that understood. I was kind of over the romanticizing, but the one that we started in, I know for sure that was the first like several years. And, people a lot of times I feel like would post pictures of this was, my worst time. And it was, like 5 years ago, but I feel like it was that we keep saying nostalgia and wistfulness. It was kind of that too, of just like, this was like the low point, but maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe it was nice.
Oh my God. Yes. Even with the alcohol, even though I've been sober for 3 years, every now and then I think, maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought. Maybe I was just being a little bitch and maybe I can have a drink. Like, I still think that every now and then. And with the bulimia, of course, it's even more recent. So it's even worse. Yeah. We do romanticize the past. And I love that you brought back, the nostalgia topic, because we talked about that a lot too. It's like we do look through these terrible things we went through with like rose-colored lens, and then we also look to the future sometimes, I think, and we can romanticize that.
I had zero indication that I had any sort of anxiety disorder or anything like that until literally I had a panic attack for 3 weeks straight.
Oh shit.
Yeah, like I think I would sleep for 2 or 3 hours a night just out of pure exhaustion because I could not keep pacing. But that's the only reason why. I'd wake up and it would just instantly be there again. And that's horrible.
It's horrible. There's nothing that'll make you feel less like a human than being sleep deprived.
I've never felt worse in my life, and I feel like that is one of the mental illnesses that you don't see as many people being like, I hope I get anxiety.
Yeah. I would just love to sleep less.
Yeah, but even still, sometimes I think about it and I think I forget it, and it's just kind of like, but it was so dramatic and exciting. Like, no, it was terrible.
I mean, it was dramatic. It was exciting in the sense that, it unleashed a bunch of events. But I wouldn't want to go back and do that again.
No.
And if I'm telling myself I would, then I just have to remind myself that I don't.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I have anything else to say. All these comments were so good, and it's just really nice to know that people feel the same way.
Yeah, so I will go through my last couple things on my notes. This one will be really quick because I want to end it hopefully a little better.
You do you.
This is more of a starting off thing, but when I was thinking of this topic in general, I remember being like a teenager, and if you're at any sort of event with people where they're like, say one word to describe yourself, I remember the first word that always came into my head was forgettable.
Oh my God. That's so sad.
That was really setting the scene.
Forgettable because you just didn't have any big issues.
I was normal. I don't cause any drama. I go under the radar. There's nothing special about me.
And that's sad because that's not bad necessarily.
I didn't think it was all bad because at least I don't stand out for the wrong reasons, like because I'm super annoying. But yes, but it still was saying like, there's nothing special about me.
Yeah, I felt like that a lot. I felt like I totally blended in until like all the way through high school. And then I didn't start going off the rails until college. And I think part of that was in a way to set myself apart and form an identity. But of course, that was all the unhealthiest ways.
So the last thing, this came about from some of the things we talked about towards the end, is I was thinking like today I could say that something that I still find myself tending to romanticize at times is going through treatment. I was thinking about it in preparation for this episode, and I do think that what I latch onto when I'm doing that is there weren't all bad things. Like, I never feel like I fit in. I never feel like I've been close with a group of people. I still feel forgettable. And there was, this group that you are forced to get close to, and people seemed to like me and find me funny, and like that was kind of like getting some of that for the first time. So that actually was a positive. But I realized today what I feel like is, if that kind of pops in my head, I allow myself this quick fantasy of thinking about returning and being in that, like supportive and, like
bubble,
the social environment where people actually care about what I have to say. And I just allow that for, like a few minutes. And then I remember all of the bad parts. And I think of, like leaving pets and having no freedom. Someone has to stand outside the bathroom when you go or unlock it for you. Tons of debt.
Yeah, I was just going to say the medical side of it.
Yes. All of that then starts to invade, and that is what brings it back. Like, okay, I allowed myself this quick little thought of, wasn't this part nice? But overall, absolutely not.
That's honestly perfect. Because I think there are parts of your mental illnesses that you should remember fondly. Like going to treatment and like going through the things you did,
I feel like you can't discount that, there were some positives maybe, or something made you feel good for a moment.
Exactly.
Even if it wasn't a good reason. Yeah. It's like that still happened.
And with treatment, there is a lot of accelerated intimacy because you are in this like microcosm with all these people who are in a very similar situation. And so of course you're going to bond quickly.
A different podcast that I listened to, and I don't want to say which one because I'm not totally confident which one I heard it on, but they often found interesting medical studies and social studies and things like that they quote. And one of them was actually a study that had detailed, in general, the amount of hours you have to spend with somebody before they are considered an acquaintance or a friend or a close friend. And, just the amount of hours to consider somebody a close friend. When you're with someone 24/7 in treatment, I was just like, yeah, you hit that in the first week.
Exactly. You can't expect to find that in real life necessarily.
Yeah, in real life that could take a long time because, you hang out with someone once a week for a couple hours.
It's about managing your expectations.
Yeah.
Life without your mental illness, or at least life recovering, is going to be different. You're going to have a new set of challenges and you're going to change. This is a great segue to the final note I had, which is things that I thought that my mental illness would do for me and ways that it actually appeared in my life. Because I want to, we romanticize this stuff a lot, but I do want to leave people with the reality that it's not pretty or fun and it's not going to bring you anything, healthy.
Yeah.
So what I thought mental illness would do for me, I thought that it would make me more creative. I thought it was my gateway to community, to being more social. I thought it made me unique and all that shit. And I thought it would help me cope with shitty life.
Yeah.
It's like Orion was saying, life can seem pointless. And so I had to put meaning in the struggle. So I thought my struggle would bring me meaning. What it actually ended up being, it stripped me of all the energy to do anything creative. Yeah. So less creativity. It isolated me from the people who cared.
I laughed at that one because I was just like, it does not make you more social.
It made me, rather than making me more unique, it made me more boring because I was so obsessed with the inner struggles.
Yes.
I couldn't focus on anything else. It makes you a boring person, ultimately. Yeah. And then ultimately it kept me from dealing with my problems and it withheld me in life rather than propelling me forward, making me more interesting or, prettier or whatever. It just kept me stuck for years and I'm still getting unstuck. And so I just wanted to leave you with that, end with that because I thought it's important to remember the reality of the situation.
Yeah, that even if you think it's going to be all flowers and rainbows and get you everything you want, at some point you're going to realize it did the opposite.
Exactly.
And it's not your fault for thinking that at first.
Yeah, just maybe ask yourself, look back and try to see it from an objective point of view. And that can be really sobering and difficult, but ultimately helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, that's it for today, I guess.
Yeah?
Yeah? Question mark? Yeah.
I also want to say that today I have been very angry because Meatball is getting into a ton of trouble, and it pisses me off that he is so damn cute.
I mean, I haven't heard him on the podcast this morning, so I'm just assuming he's off wreaking havoc elsewhere.
Yeah, he was tearing around in the very beginning, but before we started, he was just getting in so much trouble, and I was just like, why are you so cute? I hate you. Because I can't be that mad at you, because I look at you.
I wish I was that cute.
I mean, Pico is so damn cute too, but he's an angel, so it's different.
He's never going to do anything wrong.
Yeah.
But that's Pickles and Vodka. If you want to follow us on social media, you can go to our Instagram at Pickles and Vodka Podcast, where we post our pickle polls and behind-the-scene goodness.
You can go to our Twitter, assuming that Twitter does not implode upon itself. I believe that one is just Pickles Vodka. No and.
Yep, Twitter is at Pickles Vodka. And then on Facebook, we are Pickles and Vodka Podcast, and we're always having cool discussions on there, so we would love to have you.
Yeah, I should look at it at some point so I can see those.
And then if you want to follow us personally, my Instagram is at xtinajumper.
My Instagram is LaurenAFH, all together, but I am way more active on my dog Pico's Instagram, which is Pico Sauve, because I had a brain fart, so I spelled suave wrong. It's Pico.
I'm not going to put this at the end of every single
Sauve.
episode.
But if I'm going to talk to people, it's on Pico's.
I know. Yeah.
I'm never on my own.
So at Pico, Sauve. Yeah, so follow us. And we will see everyone next week.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.